Ambassador Avi Pazner, the former Israeli ambassador to France, Italy, and the Vatican, which is certainly relevant here. And Mr. Ambassador Avi, I presume you met at least then Cardinal Ratzinger when you were the ambassador to the Vatican. What was he like? Was he like that character Anthony Hopkins played in that Netflix movie, The Two Popes?
He was a very serious and timid and even shy person. I mean, a great intellectual. At the time I met him, I was ambassador to Italy, and I was conducting the negotiations for the Vatican to recognize Israel. So I saw every cardinal in town, almost, I want to exaggerate. I saw especially why? Because he was in charge then at the Vatican for the theological aspect of Catholicism. It sounds very big. He was the #1 specialist of the Catholic faith. And why was it important for me to meet him? Because I knew that the Pope John Paul II, with whom we conducted the negotiation, will ask him, Cardinal Ratzinger, is there any theological, any religious problem for us to recognize the state of Israel, the state of the Jews? And I wanted Ratzinger to be on our side. And I think he was on our side because when John Paul asked him, he gave his okay. So now I met him a few times. He was an intellectual. He was not a warm personality like, for example, the present Pope or John Paul II. Yeah. He is an intellectual, a little bit, shy. Right. And Calev, I think this is the reason why he resigned. This was not for him.
This was not the job for him.
This was not the job for him. You know, it's a very difficult job to go public and all the time, and trips and. That was not for him.
Right, and supposedly he claimed he never wanted the job that the Cardinals insisted.
I can believe him.
Let me ask you, of course, he was born in Germany. He was raised during the period of Nazi Germany. He was, let's say, drafted into the Hitler Youth when he was 14. Yes. He was then drafted into the, I think, Luftwaffe, but he eventually deserted. And there's no question about his sympathies. His family, his parents were anti-Nazis. But do you think, just having grown up in that period and dealing with Nazism impacted on his thinking towards the Jewish people, towards the Jewish state, for example?
He was violently anti-Nazi. I mean, when I had some conversation with him, and he, of course, mentioned his past, also asked me about my past. And when I told him that I was born in Danzig, on the border of Germany and Poland, and we had to flee to Switzerland, and that all the family of my father perished during the Holocaust, he was shaken. I saw how he was shaken. So I have no doubt about his personal, let's say, inclinations towards Jews and Israel, etc., etc. But it was very difficult for him because in Rome, at the Vatican, he still was considered as the German. And you know, most of the cardinals are Italian there at the Vatican. And it was difficult for him. And I was very surprised, to tell you the truth, Calev, when I heard in 2005 that they elected him as Pope, I was surprised because I met many cardinals in Rome, many who, in my view, were much more suitable than him to be Pope. And he really was, he is not, for example, John Paul II will be remembered as a great Pope, as the Pope who really changed history. You know, he glasnost in Poland, he encouraged, he went against the Soviet Union. Ratzinger, no.
Right, but many people speculate it was his election was almost a reaction to someone like Pope John Paul II. The Vatican wanted to retreat, take a more conservative line, and that may have impacted, for example, his decision to move forward with the canonization of Pope Pius, the wartime Pope, much criticized, but was seen as also a conservative figure, and maybe he didn't want to sort of buck the trend that had already developed there.
Yes, you are right, Calev. He was a very conservative figure. And he had a problem because at his time that was this explosion of sexual abuses in the church.
Right.
And he did very little about that, and in very small steps. And there was immense pressure on him to do more, and he didn't. So I very well understood when he left. And by the way, I want also to remind you of an incident during his visit to Israel in 2007 or 8, when he went to Yad Vashem, and in his speech forgot to mention the Holocaust. And people afterwards told him, what's that? You spoke about... Then on the tarmac at Ben Gurion Airport, then he gave a speech about the Holocaust. This only shows you that he had not the right timing to be public. And he was an intellectual.